Bleach Soul Resonance has been eating up a lot of my time lately. I've been logging in every day since launch, and I've been very much enjoying my time of the game at this point. But since I like to pay rent and try to make ad revenue, I thought I may as well make a tier list of the characters we have in the game so far. I imagine this Yap sesh won't take too long since the roster on release is relatively small given the style of gacha game that this is. However, let me know if you agree with these placements down below. But with that being said, let's get into this Bleach Soul Resonance tier list. Since it's my first Bleach video, let's start it off with a random single, and we're going to get a dupe. I need a dupe, and we got fuck all. Anyway, so as you can probably tell, as I said in the intro, we're going to be doing a tier list. Now, I just thought I may as well show off what I've got to kind of give you a baseline of what characters I've used and, you know, kind of spoil which ones are going to be on the top. You probably know which ones are on the top given the thumbnail and which categories are present in the thumbnail and which aren't, but we'll get into that shortly. But, you know, let's quickly pull up the tier list itself. Also, really quick, is it just me, but why is the wiki exclusively in Spanish? Like, I'm not against it. Is there just not enough, like, English-speaking players? I don't know. It's just kind of strange. Anyway, I'm going to change this. First of all, I don't like that. We're just going to go B, C, or actually, no, keep that S and we'll go A+. I don't know what order to go through, but let's go through some of the more obvious ones first. So, obviously, I'd say probably right now, as of right now, the best unit in the game, at least in regards to DPS, is kind of inarguably Bankai Ichigo. And now there's a very specific reason for that. And that reason is just, it's a combination of things, yes, but specifically with his stamp, with this, oh my god, his special attack is genuinely disgusting, because one thing you have to learn about this game if you want to improve your epic skill level is knowing when to tag and which animations, like which characters will stay on screen and which animations force them to still like keep doing an animation while you tag out. This Ichigo's special attack, when he's using it, you can tag out to anyone and go into a different animation, and it lasts a really long time, and it's doing damage the entire time. It's doing mega crits, it's doing insane damage. Like, this dude is genuinely filthy. On top of his main core stamp, dude, oh man, the damage you get from like the guaranteed like counter effect when you turn hollow is disgusting. He nukes and does genuinely insane damage. It's absurd. The reason that this guy is kind of inarguably the best DPS in the game. Also, a little fact here, I love that the game has this and tells you which, like, a recommended strat and team comp. Love that. But the reason that why this dude is so insane is just, you can use this guy on stages, like, for example, in the tower, that aren't weak to slash, and he will just DPS over that because he is insane. There's not really much to say. Main technique, his normal Getsuga, it marks the enemy so they take more damage on top of his passives, which give him more damage if they have Getsuga, and if he's hollowified, he does more damage, and his crit rate does more damage and more crit like, it's kind of disgusting how stupid this dude is, because he's doing like great damage outside of Hollow Mask, then you activate Hollow Mask and he's doing an absurd amount with the guaranteed counter from his core stamp on top of the special attacks that are guaranteed after a counter, and then you do it again, then you do a Getsuga, then you do a special attack again, then you do another Getsuga, then you do a special attack again, and then you nuke with the power of Zeus, and it is genuinely absurd. You can hit like Dokkan numbers with this stuff. He's absurd. Like, it's not even funny. Like, there are other DPSs in the game which are decent, like, we'll get into them later, but like Ikaku's fine, but Bankai Ichigo is just stupid. There's no other way to describe it. He is stupid. So yeah, kind of an arguably top tier. And as you can probably tell from the thumbnail, there's a category that is the most prevalent. Let's just get the really obvious ones out of the way. Like, Urahara is kind of inarguably above Ichigo, and when you say that, that must mean Urahara is disgusting. Yeah, that's very much the case. The reason that Urahara is so disgusting, like, if you notice here, he's a support, he's not a straight up DPS, and as the game tells you here, this is like the optimal team for him because it works with his category and everything. He's slash, right? But just like Ichigo, you can run him on any team. It doesn't matter what category you use him on. His buffs that he applies are so disgusting. If you pick a random DPS, for example, like whatever, Chad, they'll put Kisuke on the team. The game devs know that they made Kisuke so broken, it's absurd. Like, oh, Ururu, run them with Kisuke. Like, it's genuinely insane how broken. I bet you every single character, except, why the fuck? That's a random one. Barring Orihime for some reason, every other character, the game will tell you to run Urahara. Like, look at this. Nemu, exception because she buffs strictly strike, but like, barring 2, they'll tell you to use Urahara because his buffs are like global. As it doesn't matter the typing, he buffs them, which is absurd. The main way you buff them is he gets it's called like Reishi analysis. It's his passive, right? And he buffs their attack by 10%, and it's the base passive stacks 3 times. But then I think with it's either his weapon stamp or his core stamp. See, Reishi analysis can now go up to 6 times, which now means that 10% can now be capped out at 30 and now go to 60%. So that that global buff is now 60% on top of the crit damage buff applied by his ult, on top of the ridiculous damage he does with his special attack as well, which does really freaking good damage. And this, which pretty much makes him invincible. He's invisible and he runs away. The animation makes him slightly invisible for a couple of frames. Urahara gives the best buffs in the game. He doesn't have a battlefield skill, but that's so he doesn't apply like a leader buff, which is fine. Just he buffs everyone's damage to a ridiculous amount that it's absurd. There is like other buffers you can use, which we'll get into later, but he is just global. Like the game's been very generous, so you probably got all the units you want. You want Urahara the most, right? Urahara is like, even if you for whatever reason miss out on Bankai Ichigo, Urahara is always going to be on the standard pool, and that is ridiculous because he's a great damage dealer, right? His damage is deceptively decent. Alliteration is always fun. From his special attack skill, and his ult damage is kind of whatever, but his special attack skill is really good. Not much else to say. He's really strong. Now let's get the obvious out. Obviously, this is like the optimal team on the top row. These are all phenomenal together. I'd say Byakuya is the least value out of the three, and he is a slash team leader. Bankai Ichigo is the best DPS in the game by an obscene margin, and Urahara's buffs are global and can be used on any team. Byakuya, yes, he's strictly on slash, but he's like a slash team leader, right? Think of it like in Dokkan terms. He's like a category leader for slash, or for like red, right? Or like a buffer in Phantom Parade, like Team Nanami. He's like the Team Nanami, right? What he allows, he just supplements more damage, not just with his passive, which is more like to do with his battlefield skill and stuff, but when you attack with the battlefield skill, his battlefield attack does more. He reduces slash resistance, which means slash-based attacks do more damage, reduces the enemy's slash resistance. Like, he just makes it so more slashes do more damage, and if you use that alongside Bankai Ichigo and Urahara, it's phenomenal. But you could arguably use these two with Rukia, or with Uryu, stuff like that. You don't necessarily 100% need Byakuya, but he is very much worth it if you have these two as well. He still does good damage. It does kind of annoy me that Senbon Zakura Kageyoshi doesn't use Senke, you know, when like the actual swords behind him and stuff, but he does do cool stuff. He's still a really strong unit, especially with this, with his stamp that allows you to get like 6 stacks of his battlefield skill with 1 usage instead of 4. That's really handy, which I forget which one's ignore this, it's because I'm emulating it. Don't worry about that. That's perfectly normal. But ult rate charge, damage from battlefield skills, like this is disgusting as well. It's filthy, right? Yes, he doesn't have as much value as these two, but he's still really friggin' good. Okay, he's still really good. Where do we want to go to next? Let's get some sleeper picks. What are some sleeper picks? I think Ruki is in a similar tier. I think she's just hard capped as of like today. What's the date? It's the 3rd today as of recording, right? Toshiro comes out on the 5th. When Toshiro comes out, she'll go a little bit higher because they'll probably synergize really well together because they're both the same typing. They're both blue, or like energy, spiritual pressure, whatever the category is actually called. It's kind of inarguably the weakest category in the game at the moment, which is a bit of a shame. It doesn't even have an SSR. Like, you have Ururu, Orihime, and Rukia. Even in verse, that is a fodder team, except for maybe Orihime, because she just defies the laws of fiction. But you know what I'm saying, right? There's not really any huge damage dealers, but the reason why Rukia is so high is her battlefield skill on top of her passives and her stamps and stuff. The ability to just freeze enemies is kind of stupid. You can gimmick a lot of fights that you shouldn't be able to because you just keep the enemy still. You just don't allow them to move, and while they're not moving, you're just spamming Ichigo's special attack. You're spamming special attack with Urahara. You're just spamming shit at the enemy, and they literally cannot move, which is absurd. Like, the frozen status effect is really strong. Granted, it's not the most strongest because in this game, you don't lose from losing health. Most of the time, you lose from the timer getting scammed out, which means, like, she is still doing decent damage at the same time, but since she isn't, like, a blue team leader, since she's not an SSR, she's only providing a 15% buff. But granted, it's global. It's not, like, blue specific, so you can use her on a team with Ichigo and Urahara, as I said, which is nice. 15% all-team buff is good. Just wish it was 30. When Toshio comes out, she'll be a little bit better because they'll both have frozen type, abilities, and it'll work really well, and it'll synergize. Trust, it'll be really good. Yeah, there's not much else to say about Rukia. She's good. Okay, one thing that does kind of annoy me about her, though, is that she's like the only character, one of the few characters, where her technique starts a cutscene, and it's really annoying, because you can't just, like, immediately cancel out of it. It's a bit annoying. There's not much else to say about it, but it's just kind of stupid, because she has a cutscene with level 3 of her battlefield skill, a cutscene with her main technique, and a cutscene with her ultimate. It's like, bro, I get it. The devs like Rukia, even though she's an SR. I just want to cancel into another animation. Yeah, the timer is going down. Please just play the cutscene, know what I mean? I'll put Renji here. I like Renji. I think Renji might be a little bit slept on. He's not ridiculously slept on, right? Because he is just on the lower damage end. But especially if you get him to like boundary 6, where he starts doing like capped percentage-based damage, hell yes. Still kind of annoys me that they've made it like Shikai Renji instead of Bankai, even though we've already got a Rankars on the fucking way. But whatever, I'm not the devs. I just think that's a little bit stupid. I like Bankai Renji, but whatever. He isn't ridiculous, but his ult, especially with his core stamp and his weapon stamp, really strong. He's just like, you know, he's my main guy. Look at him. He's over here. Yeah, I like Renji. Maybe it's personal bias, but I think his damage isn't terrible. For example, say you don't have Ikaku, but you still have Torzin or whatever. Him alongside Torzin and Urahara can be decent. Obviously, Ikaku is significantly better. But if you don't have Ikaku and you have a couple dupes into Renji, he isn't terrible. I would suggest going into this guy a little bit. He's not bad. He's got longer range. His special attack doing laceration is really good. It's fun. I like him. Not much else to say. He's not as good as he could be, but he's still decent, right? I'll put Yachiru on the same tier. Yachiru applies similar buffs like Urahara. Yeah, like on-field characters get 20% attack, but she is more so focused specifically towards slash, right? Which is a bit annoying because the optimal team comp is always going to be Urahara, Bankai, and Byakuya for slash, because you need the team buff from Byakuya for the extra 30%, and you need Ichigo as the main DPS, and Urahara's buffs are like 60% consistently on top of the crit damage buffs. So like Urahara's blowing her out the water. So which means you either have to replace Urahara or replace Byakuya, but you can't replace Byakuya because of the percentage, and there's no point replacing Urahara because her buffs aren't as good. And she is also bottlenecked into being slash pretty much exclusive now that I look at it more and more. She'll probably be like low of... She's still really, really good. The buff she applies are good. Her ult rate is really good. Like, her damage isn't terrible. Her animations are pretty funny, but I don't think she's anything crazy. I'd probably have to look at her a bit more. I used her a little bit, but she's not great. She grants inspiration to all teammates. Yeah, she's made like heavily slash focused, which is a shame. It feels like they're gearing her up just to fit really, really well with Kenpachi. And if that's the case, they want you to run the team of like her, Kenpachi, and probably Byakuya, which people probably aren't going to do unless they're like trying to make it like a thematic team. Because if you're not doing that, it'll just be Kenpachi, Urahara, and Byakuya, which is a shame. But what can you do? But we do know Kenpachi is slash when he's coming out in the future. Don't know when, but he is coming out. Also, really quick, I don't do C tiers, but I'm going to say this now really quickly in the video. If you want more videos, like, comment, subscribe, so I have a reason to keep making these videos and I can afford to keep making them. So yeah, if you want more videos, let me know. So yeah, C tier over. Boom. Who do you want to talk about next? We could talk about Ikaku. Ikaku is good, right? Ikaku is good. Not great IMO. He's just the best damage dealer that Thrust has at the moment. I'll put him above Rook. Yeah, it depends how you value the DPS. He is above Renji by a significant margin, but they're kind of the only two options, except for maybe Uryu, but we'll get into later. Ikaku is really... He's good. He follows a similar mechanic to Bankai Ichigo in the sense that, you know, they both pop their ult and they transform. Ikaku does the same thing. He does Hazukimaru, what's it called? Ryomen Hazukimaru. And his moveset changes completely, unlike Ichigo's, because it's like a Bankai. It completely changes, right? It's similar to Byakuya's ult, where it's like a Bankai and it changes how his kit works. It changes his special attack, so it does a brick of damage. His stamps give him his special gauge immediately. His buttons and attacks are a lot bigger. His ult does decent damage. Like it's as I say, it's just like Ichigo's. Like you pop it once to transform, and then once you transform, you pop ult again. It's like a big nuke. Except he just doesn't have nowhere near as much as Bankai Ichigo. Like, if we took away the typings and we compared Bankai Ichigo to Ikaku, Bankai Ichigo is so much higher. But at the moment, he is all that Thrust really has in regards to, like, a strict DPS that isn't a buffer. Torzin is a different story, and we'll get into him shortly. But Ikaku at the moment is kind of like... I'd probably put him a bit further down, because the disparity between them two is absurd. Like, Ikaku is fun, he's good, but you can literally hit millions. You can go into the millions with Bankai Ichigo. Plural. Like, he can hit some stupid numbers on the right level, but Ikaku's not doing that. Cumulatively, sure, with like his status effect of combining with Torzin and stuff, but not as of right now, which is a shame. But as time goes on, he'll just become worse, because when Yin comes out, I think he's strictly a DPS, you know, you'll use him alongside Torzin and Urahara, and he'll just be better, because, you know, Ikaku's on the standard pool, he's not going to be as good as Gin, because that's how gacha games work, and Gin is cooler. IMO, you know, I do like Ikaku, but whatever, I'm yapping. He's good, not great, could be better, probably going to get weaker in the future, which is a shame. Who do I want to talk about next? I've went to too many SSRs, let's go back to an SR. Orihime, okay, let me look back at her kit, but from what I can tell, I think she's then kind of dog water. I mean, I've got her to max 6, and I do not care. She revives people, right? Orihime's main gimmick is healing, and then the damage buffs are secondary, so I guess I'll put her in B. As I said earlier, the main time you're going to be losing in this game isn't from losing HP and from dying. At least as of now. In the future that may change, but like a lot of similar gacha games to Bleach Soul Resonance, you're fighting against the timer more than the enemy, which means if you're like doing a hard stage, you're just mashing and kind of taking damage and not caring because you know you're not going to die anyway. There's not enough time in the level to actually kill you. If you're playing well enough, right? You're not going to die. So getting healed is pointless. And Rukia on her passive, she even heals as well. Like I'm pretty sure one of her passives, when you pop like either her ult or her battlefield skill, she starts healing. And it's like, if that's the case, why would I ever use Orihime? She applies a couple of buffs, which is nice, and she can revive, but in most scenarios, unless you're going for content that is super way leveled above you, well, I wouldn't use Orihime, because even if you're going for content that's way leveled above you, you'd use Urahara for a damage buff and whatever leader or like battlefield skill to give them more damage. You wouldn't be using Orihime. I think she doesn't fit in. Healing in this game won't work because there's not enough bosses to actually do damage, because the gameplay is relatively simple. It looks like has a little bit of its complexities and stuff, but it's mainly just dodging, countering when it flashes. There's nothing ridiculously crazy, right? Unless you're fighting Aizen, because that dude just lies to you when it flashes and stuff, which is pretty cool. But she doesn't really fit into the meta. There's a reason you get her at the start and never use her again, right? Tozen, I'll probably put Tozen about there. Tozen, really strong, really good. He does a pretty decent amount of damage. I like Tozen. Not as a character, I think he's boring as fuck. But in this game, they made him cool, right? I'm kind of annoyed though that they made he uses his Shikai once. And it's like at the end of his skill, which is really annoying. If you remember in his fight with Kenpachi and Komamura, his Shikai is like floating blades, and he only uses them once in his entire kit, which I think is a complete shame. His ult is his Bankai, which is pretty cool. I wish it looked more like the anime, to be honest, where it's like this big black dome, which was pretty awesome. And it was like, it made it all like monochrome or monochromatic, where it's like all black and white. It's not like that, unfortunately. But the visual effects are really cool for him. The damage he does with his passive, which is the wound effect, it's really pretty friggin' good. Like as a leader skill, all of Tozen's attacks, each wound is 2%, blah blah blah, stacks up to 30 times. Wounds to universal mechanic, it stacks up with different characters. Like just having him on your team will buff the rest of your team. The buffs aren't as good as Urahara, but they're still very good. However, since he is a leader that is like specifically thrust, you're not really going to use him on any other teams because you just want to use him with thrust. So that's his team will always be like him, Ikaku, and Urahara, right? Which is a shame. But you can still do pretty decently well with him. His kit is really fun. His stamps like give him extra follow-up attacks and stuff. Like really cool. I think he's really strong. One thing that does annoy me though is that his battlefield skill, like you can't cancel out of a lot of his stuff that I would want you to. Like with Urahara, you can cancel out most of his shit and tag out into another unit. Tozen, you can't cancel out as much. He feels like he's locked into a few more animations than others. I think Byakuya is better just because he is on Slash and he buffs Slash, and since Slash has the best DPS and the best support, innately Byakuya will be better. In future, Tozen plus Gin. Tozen's good, Tozen's great in this game. As I say, as a character, kind of fucking boring. Not a big Tozen guy. Not much else to say. I need to speed this up. So it's been 25 minutes of this crowding. Chad, okay, I liked Chad's moveset. I think there is one thing that's kind of slept on about Chad. So when he fights like a humanoid character, his main technique will like grab them by the mouth. Yes, this. It'll grab them. It's a command grab from a fighting game, which like, and you can tag out of that whilst he's grabbed them. So he's doing damage to them whilst you can also attack them as well. It's a fun gimmick. That's how I would describe this unit. He's fun, not good. But for example, this special attack, it takes away his HP. I know I said characters won't usually die in this game, but Chad is the exception. He starts killing himself. He starts damaging himself because his ult does more damage when you're lower, I think, or at least it heals you. I think something is it his passive or something. Yeah, when he's below, it increases his crit rate and his crit damage when he's below certain health, right? So you want him to take damage. So his special attack does damage, which I get that sort of kit, but since he's only an SR, his damage output isn't anything ridiculous, and his ult heals him anyway. It's a really confused kit. So the game wants you to get low HP, then you can do more damage, but if you then ult, those crit chances of crit rate is now gone, and the crit damage is gone. So it kind of puts you back and forth between. It's stupid. I think Chad's fun to use. I just don't think he's very good. You can get more volume out of him if you don't have Urahime. I mean, more than Urahime, sorry. If you don't have like Yoruichi, sure. And you don't have like a strike DPS, sure, you can use him. But to be honest, I would just still use like Sajin or Komamura with like Nemu and then Urahara or something, right? But we'll get into that now. Talk about Komamura first. Komamura is mixed for me. He was the first SSR I pulled. He does have a battlefield skill, which I like. He literally changes the game into like a mecha. It's like, it feels like you're playing like a Gurren Lagann game. Komamura has a unique kit, to say the least. He's very strange. I will say one thing, when you have his stamp, his shield is good, but however, as I said before, you're not going to be taking a lot of damage in his game, so the shield kind of defeats the purpose, to be honest. Does good damage, and there's big AoE, that's great, and if you have his weapon stamp, there's a follow-up that comes up afterwards, which does decent damage, but what's the point in giving people a shield if you're not going to be taking damage anyway for the most part, right? There isn't, okay? So I get what they were going for, trying to make him like a tank that supports the team with like a global shield for the entire team, but it doesn't work, because it would be so much better if he just did more damage instead of giving everyone a shield. He's just not great. His damage output is okay, not great, even though like on the stats screen it says he's got really high DPS or high damage. I don't think so. He's got high survivability, but when I have 3 minutes to kill a boss with 40 health bars, I'm not thinking about my survivability. I'm thinking straight DPS, and that is something that Strike just lacks, especially because of him. His battlefield skill is fine, but it can be really friggin' annoying, if I'm completely honest, because one really annoying thing about his kit is his battlefield skill, right? Initially, it's good. So whenever you do like, you know, a special attack or skill or whatever, you can cancel into his battlefield skill. But on like every third skill, he will do a big one that forces a switch. But what if I'm in the middle of doing like a bunch of damage with Yoruichi? It forces a switch, and it's really annoying. Like his kit, his battlefield skill, you want to use it because it's good damage, it's free damage, but it forcibly tags you out, which is very much annoying. His ult is fine. You pop his shield and then his ult. That is the only justifiable case for his shield, because when he's you know, Kokujo Tengen Myo, when he's massive, right, the shield is still active on him, but since he's such a bigger hurt box, he can start taking a bunch of damage from all the enemies around him. So it's kind of understandable where like to use his shield here, and his shield makes sense with that part of his kit, just not the rest of it, right? And his ult also does more damage depending on what level you got his battlefield skill to, which I think is connected to his passive. Yeah, it caps out at 10, but with I think 6, as it says here, it caps out at 16. Either way, when you have it at max 10, it doesn't do anything. Like it says he's full DPS, he's all great damage, but he's just still nothing compared to this dude. He's okay, he's just not very good, and even compared to Yoruichi, he's doing less damage. Since he is the Strike leader, he does have some innate value, but I think his kit is just kind of not built for the meta of the game as of right now, right? Shields don't really do anything. Same with healing. That's why Orihime is so low. I think healing is kind of pointless, because even on the like the roguelite stage, I forget what it's called, you constantly, even if you're like taking stuff that lowers your HP, you can get buffs that give you HP back. Like there's not really, you're going to be constantly getting healed, or you don't need to be healed, so it doesn't really matter. Let's go Bankai Ichigo. I'll be honest with you, he's just completely outshined by Bankai Ichigo, so I haven't used him in a friggin' while. Like his kit isn't terrible. I say, like, if you don't have Bankai Ichigo, sure, use this guy. He's just like, you know, better than the initial version, like, which is kind of, you know, expected. The waves, he can do surprisingly decent damage with the waves he creates when he uses his special attack, when he has like a full charge of his substitute Reaper badge or whatever the passive or whatever it's called is. Like when this is fully charged and he starts doing sword waves, you can do a decent amount of damage. It's just raw extra damage, which is good. His ult is big, AoE is great, does a lot. It's obviously nothing compared to Hollow-Fired Ichigo, like Bankai Ichigo, but it's okay. His charge technique does surprising damage. It does take a little while, and on certain bosses it does tend to miss sometimes, because if it's like a harder boss, they won't get like dragged up with you. They might just like dodge back and dodge away, so this can miss sometimes when it's like the spiritual pressure version, which is a little bit annoying. But overall, the unit's not bad. I'd put him in like, he does have some value because he is slash. I'd say Renji is better just because Renji's range is more consistent. Zabimaru and his special attack from Zabimaru and his ult are just really, really big and wide, and Ichigo has to kind of get his spiritual pressure up for that. Where do we want to go next? So yeah, Nemo's like a type specific buffer with like her ult and stuff and some other parts of her kit, but she's not very good. I'm going to try to speed through these because I've already been recording for half an hour. She's not great. The buffs she supplies are lower than Yachiru for like slash typing, but for strike, right? They're just not as high. She's just not as good as Yachiru, and even Yachiru gets outshined by Urahara, and Urahara you can use on any team. So I would just say, if you're wondering about using Nemu, just use Urahara instead. There's not really a reason to use her. Like I have her on boundary 6 and I do not level her up because there's not really a reason to. Granted, strike is pretty weak at the moment, to be honest. I don't really like how strike feels, mainly just because, as I said, Komamuru's battlefield skills don't feel nice. Nemu's okay, just I'd suggest just using Urahara instead, and the game, for most people, the game agrees, so just use Urahara instead. Since her buffs are like significantly lower than Yachiru, I'd put her a bit lower. Okay, Uryu's a weird one because I've had a lot of people sing his praises and talk about how great he is and that he's one of the best damage dealers in the game. I haven't seen that yet. He is an all-type buffer, which is 15%, which is fine. He might be one of the best DPSs in the game. I've had like weird things about him. Maybe he's like really good and I'm just missing it. But to be honest, he feels kind of mid to me as of right now. Maybe I'm wrong. Feel free to disagree. But since his battlefield skill is only a 15%, it is pretty annoying. He is one of the few, he's like the only zoner in the game, besides like maybe Ururu, and like he can keep range and he's got more survivability, but unless he's doing like a specific challenge, that's not really going to be an issue. Only 15% is a bit of an annoyance. His battlefield skill does force a switch, which I'm never a huge fan of. That does annoy me. I don't like it. I think the exception is Byakuya, because you can still like use it 6 times before you have to switch. With Uryu, it's just, I think it depends on how much you combo and stuff. It's a bit annoying. I still think he's good though. I still think like on Thrust, if you don't have Torzen, he's not a bad second option. He is very decent. Ururu, I guess, and she's like the only dedicated like blue DPS. Sure. Momo, not obtained. Momo's not in the game. What the fuck? There's more. I didn't even notice that. Did they accidentally put like the Momo stuff here already? That's kind of funny. Ururu is technically speaking the only like blue DPS. I haven't put anything into her. Have I got her maxed out on boundary? Got like 3. Sure, that's fine. She's not anything crazy. Blue, as I said earlier, is a very weak category, so she might see more play in the future, but as of right now, there's not really much point. As it says here, with Momo coming out, maybe that'll change. I don't see much point. Since Rukia is like an all-types buffer, there's not really a reason to use her. Sure, you might get some use out of her. Her damage with her special attack can be decent, and it is zoning is range, which is pretty nice, but overall, she's not much to talk about. Just Orihime sucks. So we'll talk about initial Ichigo. I guess I'd just put him there. There's not much to say about him, to be honest. Like, you get him and you don't use him ever again, because then you get Shikai for free, so why would you use the initial variant? Like, his kit is very, very, very simple. Like, there's nothing much to say about him, his buffs or whatever, but overall there's not much to say about the unit. He's just like a weaker version of Shikai and a weaker version of Bankai. He's fine. That's about it. There's literally nothing else to say. As I say, I really need to speed up, because this recording's about to hit 40 minutes. Okay, so I think Yoruichi's pretty friggin' decent. This is like value, as I said earlier, right? I think Yoruichi is obviously kind of inarguably, because she's the only like SSR DPS for Strike, but she's still really good. Like, as a DPS, her damage output is really good. Her ult, I think, heals her. Her like technique and her stamp and stuff works really well with her. It guarantees another counter attack, which does a lot of damage. It's the same sort of stamp as Hollow Ichigo, where like when you enter the like transformed state, Shunko's very similar to the Hollow-fied stuff, except there's no like big nuke afterwards. But when you do Shunko, she does a brick of damage, right? The initial lightning bolt, and then you do the counter attack from this stamp, and she does a brick of it. Like, this Yoruichi is no joke. It's just a shame she's on Strike. Strike will be better over time. I feel like she gets healed. Maybe I'm just making that up. But ult damage 80, Shunko 40. This Yoruichi is kind of slept on because she's on Strike, which is understandable, because Komamura is kind of shit. He's just not great. But the 30% damage buff is really good from him. But overall, when you're not like being tagged in by Komamura forcing his way into the battle, you are dealing damage with Yoruichi, and Yoruichi does good damage. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She's a good unit. She really is. She's just kind of burdened with being on Strike, which I think is a shame. She's a good unit. Not much else to say. She is good. I'd probably put her there, yeah. All of her attacks, since it's like multi-hitting, they're very wide and they'll hit a lot more than you expect. Her special attack is also really good and does a brick of damage as well. She's a really good unit. It's just, as I say, Strike sucks at the moment. Like, it's obviously Slash, then Thrust, then Strike, then Spiritual Pressure, because it doesn't even, or Energy or whatever it's called, because it don't even have an SSI yet. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now. That was the tier list. Let me know how much you disagree down below, and that was a complete yap sesh. That's it. This is going to take forever to cut, but just my dudes. Hope I see you in the next one. Peace.